Good morning, everyone. It's a real pleasure. In fact, good morning, AI for the rest of us. It's fantastic to be here. What I'm going to do today is it's actually really fortuitous timing that I'm actually having this conversation with you now, because I'm going to take you through the first steps of a really huge transformation that we're undergoing at Vodafone at a global level. And this really is almost chapter one. So when we go to coffee straight after this, it's going to be really great to get your feedback on this. But this is, I would say, our real chapter one in terms of transforming with AI and also operationalizing AI. But first of all, and again, I tend to get one of two comments when I say that I'm at Vodafone. So number one is it's either basically your service is either really good or really bad, and I moved. So if the latter is the fact, then I apologize on our behalf. But Vodafone is huge. It's absolutely huge. So we are 98,000 people in Vodafone, spread all over the world. And if you include what we call our partner markets, so places like Australia, US, New Zealand, that number expands greatly. But broadly, we have our operations across EMEA. So across Europe, across Africa, we have a very, very strong presence. Now, there are big, very influential parts of Vodafone that no one really knows anything about, even internally. So, you'd be in very good company. But I'm part of the organization of Vodafone, which is called VOICE. And VOICE is an acronym for Vodafone Intelligent Services. Now, if I'm to talk about what's called GBS, or Global Business Services, would everyone know what I'm talking about? Very quickly. Some would, some wouldn't. Okay, brilliant. That's a perfect ratio that I was anticipating. So Global Business Services, if you imagine VOICE almost as an Accenture or a Deloitte within Vodafone, so that we provide products, we provide services at a cheaper cost to the rest of our Vodafone entities, like Vodafone Ireland, Vodafone Germany. That's what we exist to do. Now, for years with VOICE, when we were set up, we were known what was called as a captive shared service organization. So by that means that we couldn't hold any profit or loss. Couldn't have a P&L, couldn't take any commercial risk. All of that changed in April, which is really different in the global GBS market, which actually, by the way, is worth trillions of dollars. One of those phantom markets that's huge. But we've now got a commercial model where we can actually go out to market. And this, of course, has dovetailed with our broad AI transformation. And of course, the market moves towards AI. And what I want to take you all through today, and I'll introduce you to myself in just a moment, but what I really want to take you through today is how we are setting VOICE up to be an engine for AI transformation across the whole of Vodafone. That's really the objective here. So I'm going to take you through what that vision is, how we're planning to do that, and then at coffee, I'm very happy to get any critique from everyone. But let me introduce you to me. So who am I, and what right do I have to be on this stage today? So Hannah did an amazing job introducing me. But first of all, I think a little bit, and I am actually going to use the journey analogy a little bit, but I'll skip on from it, Jess. So initially, PhD is in computational propaganda. I've been thinking and using AI since, to date myself, but very much since the mid-2000s. So really trying to think about what the extent to which you can start to influence human behavior online and through digitization. So that was at Royal Holloway. Of course, through our careers, we start to evolve, we take bits and we build on top of those. Hannah started talking about my work with intentional computing or digital well-being, that whole space. My whole PhD was on extremism and terrorism. So how can you propagate that online? Now, that's a really hard space to be in. So flipping that over, what I started to look at, what would that look like? How can you start to create meaningful, intentional, and also good spaces? How does that work online? And that led me, of course, you can just see at the top left, to doing work with the Google team with the whole digital wellbeing launch on Android. And then just coming up to the top right-hand side, apologies for the branding clash, but what I'm looking at, but the work now that I look at is really starting to understand how can you implement now autonomous decision-making, artificial intelligence. How can we start to do that in big matrixed corporations, organizations of the kind that we're doing at Vodafone? Now, I wanted to give you a sense, again, nobody really knows what voice is, and I think it's important to just give you a sense of who we are, where we operate, what our scale is. Because now I tell you, you'll probably see us everywhere. But you can see there just the different, we're 30,000 people in voice, over 30,000 people, and we're growing. So, we're just under a third of the whole Vodafone organization. And you can see just where we operate. So right the way across Europe and in India as well, we have our big centers across Egypt, and we're split right the way down the middle. So our ability, so the way that we deliver technology, products, expertise to the rest of the business, but also business services as well, like innovation, like marketing. This is really the size and the scale of voice. So we really are a huge organization, very, very technology literate, and of course, we provide all of these services to the bigger Vodafone organization. And these, what you can see on screen just here, are just some of the different services that we do offer. So you can see we span the gamut, so things like FinOps, supply chain, security ops. There are lots of different areas in which voice has expertise, and in which we're trusted to provide this expertise to markets quickly and also at a low cost as well, different to, say, going to a very expensive, maybe SI, systems integrator partner. So you've really got a sense of the scale of our operation. You've really got a sense of what we do as well, the different areas in which we operate. And this is just a very high-level view of the journey of voice. So we have been in operation since about 2006, as you can see. And this is really how we built ourselves out. Now, this sense of constant evolution with voice, even though we knew when we started as that captive shared service organization, we very much did this with the mind that we knew we were going to this commercial model, and we knew that driving that innovation through in an industry which actually tends to be quite staid. This really has been our ambition all along. Now, in April this year, we announced a huge partnership with Accenture. So Accenture invested in us as we started to go along this commercialization journey, so this commercialized shared operations. And I wanted to share this with you as well, because again, this is really almost like the life cycle of a shared service engagement with someone. So if someone came to us and said, listen, we really want some FinOps support, we really want some security ops support, on the left-hand side, that's the lightest touch. That's the lightest touch engagement that we would have with them. So again, our large-scale organization, being that low-cost provider, that's the lightest touch, and to be honest, that's the furthest away that we are from the customer. Being that change agent for an organization like Vodafone, where we are considered critical national infrastructure, so all of, for example, the 111 number, that's a service that we operate. So being that critical national infrastructure, it's difficult to be a change agent. Millions of people rely on our services, but this is something, again, increasingly that we're being asked to do, especially with the change in business environment. And then finally, being that strategic partner, this is the area that I'm going to be talking about that we are now moving in towards. So my role in this whole AI journey, so I lead what's called our AI practice. It's almost a single front door for all AI engagement within voice. And my remit really is this. So we have fantastic, wonderful engineers who are building out a really strong AI infrastructure around our AI strategy. But one of the things that we found as we've started to build this out is that this is not enough. It's not enough to have the best toys. It's not enough to have, the fastest or most efficient models. Actually, when you start to think about business growth, how are you going to grow your business in this new AI reality? You have to start looking at what constitutes technology-driven business growth, and that's a really hard question. It ends up being a very hard question because in a lot of cases, you have to go back to the drawing board. And so this is really one of the big area that I'm focused on. So, for example, how then do we start to look at our pre-existing technology landscape? How do we look at what we have from an AI perspective? And how do we start to sweat those assets? How do we start to get closer to our customers? How can we start to get business growth from our technology assets? It's particularly with AI. One of the things that we found, not only in our organization, but I speak at many conferences, is that there's a race to just go with it, to have technology-led transformation. So to immediately spin up use cases, tactical use cases, which at times tend to be a little bit myopic. With technology-driven business growth, understanding how our technology is really going to drive our business to where it needs to be is necessarily a strategic view that you have to take. With AI, it's hard because the landscape changes daily. But when you start to have that 12-month view, an educated 12-month view, this is the area that we're focusing into. And from a voice perspective, so this, I'd like to preface this as well, and I'm very happy to engage with this. But this is really from a standing start. So if you have technology-led business growth, if you have that, what does that start to look like in an organization like ours with 30,000 people around the world? And it's having a voice AI practice where you have all of your infrastructure, and actually, again, this is not the topic of this talk, but really happy to discuss it, but the telco's positioning within the wider AI market is really unique and incredibly interesting. Again, people think of Vodafone as telco, when actually it's better to think of us as, say, connectivity. We have one of the largest IoT businesses in the world. So thinking about how we are going to start connecting people, how we're going to start connecting things and also spaces as we go into the coming years, this is incredibly fascinating. So this is how we're starting to drive this AI, almost voice as an AI engine for the rest of the business to drive transformation, AI transformation, not just internally, but also externally for our customers. So that's a high-level view, and you're one of the first people to see this as well, by the way. So everything I've told you is a little bit academic. So is quite conceptual. So what are the things that we have done that are live at the moment? So what are we actually working with? The first, in fact, this is always quite useful. Can I get a show of hands? Who actually is on Vodafone here? Okay, great. Do you use the Toby bots? You don't. That's not my product, which is perfect. So fine, I'll feed that back. So one of the key products that we've rolled out, thankfully, so not to the UK just yet, but to Portugal and to Slovenia and to Albania, is what we're calling Toby AI. So this AI-enabled chatbot, which enables our customers to start to have multimodal communications in local languages. This has been live now for a little over a year just now, and serves millions and millions of conversations per year. So this is just one of the one of the products that we've started to test out with the market. Interestingly, I think going back to referencing Jess's presentation this morning, one of the things that we found is that it's, again, having a chatbot that can have that can serve multimodal conversations with customers is fine. It's fine. But if you can't get it through security, if you're constantly in a GDPR battle in terms of serving PII data or confidential information, that's one of the things that's really, I think, hampered development. So having that, again, to that point of having a very clear data strategy, doing that beforehand, it's all work to do beforehand, but it really slows you down. And I think that's the difference between being technology-led rather than being business or customer-led with your AI. You will have seen, if you're particularly close to the telco industry or if you're particularly close to the finance news, that Vodafone, we've just signed a new 10-year multi-billion-dollar deal with Microsoft. And of course, this is across cloud, AI, and data. But this partnership is going to be absolutely huge for us. And actually, just to very quickly labor the point about partnerships, as part of the AI practice, one of the key elements that I'm particularly driving that we see is incredibly important and almost a principle of mine is to have exceptional partners. The AI journey is not something that you can do by yourself. If we try, what we found is that by doing the work ourselves, by building everything ourselves from a standing start, we move much slower. We run into more problems of the type I just described. But by being with really excellent connectors, I'll talk more about this Microsoft partnership and how it's starting to accelerate us. This is helping us to move much, much more quickly. So the Microsoft partnership, and again, this is something now that I'm responsible for, one of the things that we've just kicked off just now, and actually we're about to go live in November, is that we've now got 68,000 Copilot licenses that are going to go live for people in the key markets, and particularly within voice for 30,000 people. That's what we're going to be, that every single person within voice is going to have access to AI and Copilot in November. So it's an absolutely huge rollout. It's absolutely enormous. One of the big things that's come back to us in the Microsoft team, because we are not looking after the technology side of things. So if there's ever a P1, that goes somewhere else. If there's any technical problems, that goes somewhere else. Really what's been emphasized to us is that this Copilot rollout for us, and this, I think we are the biggest rollout within Europe, is that this is a business-led transformation. This is really a business transformation. So we're starting to think now about, and what's really interesting from this is that we're getting lots of different takes from different people who are either internal or external to us. So we're getting people say, for example, right, you've got 32,000 licenses. What use cases can you spin up? How can you start to prove everything? And to do things right now, whereas you have other people saying, okay, we need to look at everything we do. We need to look at all of our workflows. Because is it important to us that we can just summarize our emails? It's not really, to be honest with you. Is it important that you can just summarize your meetings? It's not. 68,000 licenses is a huge investment from us. So then really starting to think about, and I'll go into the KPIs that we're looking at, but really starting to think about what value is with AI. It's a really huge question. And it goes beyond cost. So the cost that you're spending on the licenses, it goes beyond the number of people say that you're upskilling. It goes beyond the number of processes that you're starting to automate. So we're really starting to think what is value? What is value in an AI world? And it turns out it's incredibly complicated. So because of that, one of the things that I'm definitely leaning into is that we weren't set up correctly. We weren't even set up correctly to Everyone would get Copilot. Everyone is going to get Copilot. It hasn't launched yet. Everyone is going to get it. But what does that mean? If you just turned on your computer and you had access to Copilot, like, so what? And it turns out, operationally, I think that we needed to do a much better job of being able to deliver on the value and on the promise of Copilot. And that's actually, what's interesting is that that's something that came back from the Microsoft team. I haven't got very long, got 10 minutes. That's something that came back from the Microsoft team in terms of we needed to set ourselves up much better. So for ourselves, we found that being able to almost like to stop the island hopping, stopping from going from one department to another, to another, to another, we needed to have everyone in the right team to be able to deliver on AI. So we needed to have our data people in the right teams. We needed to have security and compliance, like some of the most important people. We needed to have our product people, everyone in the right team. And it did need to be huge, but we needed to stop that island hopping because that enabled us to move much faster and it enables the work that we're doing to be much more impactful. And these are the types of people, these are almost the roles that we're seeing that I say we, I use the royal we, but these are the roles that we're feeding upwards that are going to enable us to move much quicker, that we need to have as part of, number one, the broader AI practice, but also once you start to shrink that down in the different operational teams. And all of this really does matter. It really does matter because some of the challenges that we've been facing into, and I'll talk more broadly about transformation later, but again, a lot of the challenges we're coming into are not technical. So for example, there are business realities, like, we've invested in Microsoft, but Microsoft really have invested in us. It's a very public investment, very public relationship. So they are really interested. How do you get value from Copilot? If we just turn around in 12 months and say, actually, do you know what, it wasn't that useful. So having people, for example, in our team who understand the finance, who understand change management from an AI perspective, having all of our technical people, all of this really matters, and having this in a nice, neat box. But also people that understand AI as well, investing in that AI talent has been a slow process. But from the work that we've done, some of which I can share, some of which I can't, but has been incredibly valuable to us. And I'll just leave this here. This is a little bit of a busy slide, but I'll share with Hannah. Happy to share this. But one of the things that I would say, and there's a few bits that have been redacted, but I think looking at maybe the top four rows, in terms of what we're looking at, in terms of what's important to us. What's important to us in terms of AI. And again, it's really important to try and separate the signal from the noise. But, sorry, not the top four, the top three. Sorry, the bottom three. But, adoption's really important for us. So again, we could have a big bang approach with AI, but if no one's using this thing, or if people are using this and they're not getting the true value from it, that's really important for us. Extensibility as well. So not only about people using AI, but also what's the extent to which AI starts to enhance our current technology landscape or our strategic technology landscape. I think over the last couple of days, you will have heard about different things like, say, ServiceNow Copilots or Salesforce Copilots. But I think the extent to which we can start to make AI extensible, that we can start to have different databases talking to one another to make that customer experience richer and the business value enhanced. That's really important to us. And then finally, again, I talked a little bit about value, but really defining what value means. And you can see just coming down the bottom, we call them service lines or service towers, but different areas like HR, like finance, like supply chain, they're all going to have their different views in terms of what value constitutes for AI. So again, really defining that and then representing that is incredibly important. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to skip a couple of these slides. So what are we thinking of In terms of the AI practice, and maybe away from the Toby, what are the things that we're starting to think of? So from a co-pilot perspective, and I imagine all of you, if you're using this if you're using AI discreetly at work, I'm sure you'll start to have your own official programs very soon. But I think really starting to think about, from our perspective, I think the co-pilot opportunity is huge. I think it's absolutely huge. I think knowing how to fail intelligently, and not so much failing quickly, but failing intelligently, so that we can start to serve those learnings to our markets, is going to be incredibly important. So I've put that there. Being a first adopter and leading in terms of experimentation, I think that's a massive, massive opportunity for us. You can see they're just coming across. A lot of these products might be unique to telco, maybe not, but the whole thing of having multi-LLMs. So, for example, we own M-Pesa within Kenya, and we've got very large operations within Africa. But there are no, from the conversations that we've had, again, happy to be corrected, but from the conversations we've had with the hyperscalers, there are no LLMs that are within local languages within Africa, and those kinds of services would be building services around local LLMs or multi-LLMs would be incredibly valuable for the communities there and the businesses there. You can see they're coming and having, for example, AI back-end connectivity from all of the services and products that we provide as Vodafone. By starting to enable all of that, enable our back-end products with AI, is just a massive, massive opportunity for us. I've just got a few minutes left, and I really wanted to finish with this. So I could talk, and I very much can talk, technically, and I can go into a lot of detail about the aforementioned slides. But Hannah mentioned about human-led transformation, and that's really important to me, and it's something I never ever hear about as I go about speaking at different conferences. But I think now more than ever, this is just such an amazing opportunity to start to drive human-led transformation. Interestingly, if you can imagine being in Vodafone and you hear that you've got an Accenture partnership coming in, plus you've got lots of AI, if you're an employee, that's just a perfect breeding ground for fear and thinking about what am I going to be doing, what is my job going to be. So I think really focusing on the humans and focusing on the people within our organizations has been incredibly important. So for example, we're working with, in fact, I'm going to jump around this, building out our academic ecosystem. So we partner with all of the different SIs, but I think expanding our partner ecosystem to include academic institutions, people who are paid to research all day and not kind of almost be profit-led with that is incredibly important. So we're working with Imperial College and the University of Cambridge to start to really think about what AI value is and drawing on the experience from their different schools and their different schools there. Digital mental health, we're working with the Google team and also the Microsoft team as well to start to integrate mental health and also, I say employee experience, but things like intentionality, trying to integrate these as non-functional requirements as we're starting to build out these AI-enabled workflows. All of this really, really matters. Things like, for example, when people finish their meetings right at the top of the hour and then directly have to go into another one, these are things that we can start to design for and make that whole employee experience better. But then I think also, I've got their digital intentionality. We can start to be much more intentional. We can help our employees be much more intentional about how they structure their work days now with AI. And then finally, I think, within the AI practice, we've spent, I've just outlined, we've spent a lot of money. There's a lot of people starting to get online with this new technology. And I think people coming into this, I think rightly are starting to think, is it okay to fail? Or rather, I'm building this, we're building out this use case, it absolutely has to succeed. So I think creating that culture of enabling people to fail intelligently and then reuse and recycle that learning is incredibly important. So that's chapter 1. I'm going to stop there, but I'll be really happy to chat more outside and tell you more about where we get to next year. So thank you very much.